In the Pits is partnered with Compete. Compete is a Texas-based brand by Jell Stewart of professional team AC Diesel that provides custom jerseys, pants, headbands, straps, tech shirts, and any other soft goods to help individuals and teams compete at the highest level. Support Texas Paintball and message Compete on Facebook or Instagram and mention In the Pits Podcast for 10% off your entire order. In the Pits is partnered with Paintball Kumite. Paintball Kumite is a program designed by Colt Roberts of professional team San Antonio X Factor to take paintball players of all ages, experience levels, and skill groups and mold them into champions. The program breaks the game down into small, easy-to-learn sessions designed to help you master the fundamentals so that you can elevate your game. Newcomers to the program get a free 1-hour introductory class when mentioning In the Pits. To sign up for a class, message at Paintball Kumite on Instagram. In the Pits is partnered with Get Dat Shot. Get Dat Shot now offers first-in-line photo and video editing, 20% off Get Dat Shot merch, and 20% off prints to all teams that wear the Get Dat Shot logo on their jersey. Message GetDat_shot on Facebook or Instagram to become a Get Dat Shot program team. Welcome, everybody, to episode 25 of In the Pits Paintball Podcast. This podcast is focused on everything that has to do with the paintball scene here in Texas, from professional players and teams to new divisional programs, local tournament series, field owners, Texas-based brands, even photographers and videographers. Every week, we will have a short and sweet episode with a new topic and special guest. I'm Christian Smith. I'm a player for the Texas Titans, and this episode we are going in the pits with Archie Montemayor, pro player for San Diego Dynasty and one of the names behind the Project brand. Archie, how are you doing this evening?
Great, man. How are you?
Doing good, man. Thanks for coming on the show. Episode 25, we had to make it big.
Nice. Yeah. Well, thanks for having me.
Appreciate it, man. So let's get started. So for those listening, maybe they don't know like so much about you personally. How long have you been involved in the Texas paintball scene?
Well, I was born in Austin, so I've been involved in Texas paintball. I think, since I've been playing, probably which was somewhere around '99, maybe late '98. It was like a birthday party thing, but I quickly got into the tournament scene because some of my high school friends at the time were already playing like local 3-man and 5-mans. So I kind of got into the tournament bug pretty quickly, and then kind of everything was downhill from there. By 2003, I started playing national tournaments, first with Fuel, and then one event later I ended up getting picked up by Addicted in semi-pro, and we won our my first semi-pro 10-man event. And kind of since then it was, I bounced around a little bit and then joined up with X Factor in the divisional days. And then we helped, we all turned that team pro, obviously. And then, for the most part, the rest is history.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that if you want to get a more in-depth story for anyone listening, go watch the BKIT documentary. I think it's on Amazon Prime still. Go check it out. Definitely has more like in-depth timeline of all that. So Archie, since you've gone pro, just give me like a few of the teams that you've been on like since turning pro.
Well, I've really only played for 2 teams outside of like guesting on a few other pro teams. But really it's been X Factor. Obviously I helped turn the team pro. A few years after that, I played with Dynasty for a season and a half, and then came back to X Factor and helped really solidify the team as like a top team, overall for many, many years. And then obviously this past year, I joined back up with Dynasty again. I've guested on Infamous for some of the mech events and ICPL stuff. I've played in Europe for pro teams, Tauntauns, Breakout, Spa, and Icon, Rammstein Instinct, and also the ML Kings, which was pretty much an all-American team. And then other than that, I played for, a handful of other teams at other, smaller national events or international events.
Well, that's really cool to see that you're really just staying with those with X Factor and with Dynasty. Like even Dynasty has only been, 2.5 years now over the span of your career?
Yeah, that's correct. I played with a lot of the guys on the team currently in Europe with the ML with Golden State Kings. That was in 2019, and we had a pretty phenomenal year over there. And that was also the year that we won the series championship with X Factor here in the States. So that was a really cool kind of bonding experience with a lot of those guys, and it definitely set the it kind of put the groundwork in for me to maybe play with those guys again on Dynasty at some point later down the road.
For sure, and we'll talk about we'll get more into that as the show goes on. But it's really cool to see that, like, you know, a top level pro such as yourself, like, really just staying on one team for the most part, like, and not hopping around to, like, you know, whoever the highest bidder is, which you definitely could have taken advantage of over your career, but just staying with the X Factor boys and turning them pro and turning them into their, you know, current monstrous legacy that they have.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely guys that are kind of known for bouncing around a lot and often. I'm proud to say that's not me. You know, some guys only play with one team their entire career, and that's I think there's something to be said about that. But at the same time, you know, there's always reasons for switching teams and doing things differently. And you know, again, even if you've got a good enough reason to yourself to swap teams often, then, you know, by all means, you know, it's not like we're getting paid, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars to play this game. It's just the amount of money we make in this is just so insignificant over the grand scheme of things that ultimately you should be doing whatever you think is going to make you happiest. You know, thankfully in my career, that didn't mean bouncing around a whole lot, which I do. You know, I am proud of the fact that I've played with a largely consistent group of guys. I think that's definitely the harder way to do things, and I think you end up proving more to yourself and others as a result of doing that. But by all means, you know, you got to answer whatever is calling you, and for everybody, you know, that's a different thing.
Yeah, for sure. And I absolutely no disrespect to those players that do, like, chase the bag, for lack of a better term, because those guys have definitely earned that status. So there's also something to be said, you know, for being one of those sought after players.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, again, you know, everybody's kind of got looking to get something out of this game, whether it's, you know, some sort of financial gain or, you know, more tournament wins, you know, where you might just want to try to get on the best team you can possibly get on. You know, and obviously, like, I've had my reasons for doing the things in my career that I've done, you know, and for me, like, one of the highest values that I had for the longest time was to, you know, go pro with a group of guys that I kind of grew up playing with and against. And then at some point after that, it was to win a series championship with the same, you know, group of guys, you know, and that was thankfully something, you know, we checked off the list. And you know, at this point in time in my career, I mean, I'm 36 years old and I've been playing pro for 16 years. I think this will be my 17th season pro. You know, so I've been playing pro as long as I've been an adult, essentially. And you know, for me at this point in that stage, it's you know, I'm looking for a few different things, and maybe a little more, you know, deeper level of fulfillment, and you know, being around you know, a group of guys that I'm just, you know, maybe a little more in line with.
For sure. And I think your current stint with Dynasty, I mean, this season, winning 3 events, winning the series once again. So, so far so good with the current chapter.
Yeah.
So yeah, continuing on, or do you have something you want to say on that?
I mean, no, I was just gonna say that obviously the year kind of speaks for itself with regard to the results. We had a phenomenal season. I just don't know that that's ever going to be topped again. And again, you know, there was a lot of pressure. I think I tried not to take on the pressure, but, you know, when you're a player of, like, you know, of my caliber, and I'm going to a team that was the winning team, you know, there's a lot of pressure there, because if we don't continue to win, then it's easy to say, oh, well, what was different, you know? You know, regardless if that had been the case, you know, I wouldn't have been too beat up about it, because the fact of the matter is it's hard to win paintball tournaments, and there's a certain level of you know, luck and skill involved in winning tournaments. And so even if we hadn't had the best season in the world, I know that wouldn't have changed who I am over the overarching, you know, theme of my career, you know. But obviously it's nice to, make the switch and have such a dominant year with those guys. And obviously we had a lot of fun doing it.
Absolutely, and definitely no question to your career and to your legacy at all, especially after this season. So having been playing paintball since 99, going on 22, 23 years now, most of it here in Texas, what are some things that have changed within the Texas scene over that time period?
Well, I would at this point I would argue that Texas is like the mecca of paintball. There's big scenes in all three major cities, or areas, of paintball, being Dallas, Houston, and the Central Texas area, which is Austin, San Antonio, and even there's a lot going on in the Valley too. So, but again, there's multiple semi-pro teams, D1 teams, pro teams. There's multiple teams in every single division fighting to win every national tournament, right? I mean, that kind of speaks for itself. At the present moment, like, this is where kind of the next thing is happening, man. There's just a lot of really positive momentum and a lot of really good talent coming out. Not just talent, but also a lot of hardworking talent. And I think that's what's going to be shown in the next, probably 5 to 10 years, is a lot of these guys that are nurturing their talent here and working hard and practicing a lot, and something that I'm not doing a lot of myself personally, but I know it's happening. And it'll be interesting to see, how dominant Texas will be kind of going forward.
Absolutely. For those guys that are currently in the divisional scene in Texas, they know like there's a lot of really good teams like in D5, D4, D3, like all the way up to semi-pro and pro that are just, whenever they go play NXL, they're constantly on the top. Like Tribe won, I think, 3 events in the NXL and D4. They're out of Paintball Fit. You've got over in D1, obviously, you've got Paintball Fit and Austin Notorious that finished first and second in the semi-pro series. Austin Notorious winning the pro spot. Even at World Cup this year, you had TKO, another team out of Texas, winning the D4 5-man. Over in D3, you've got the Texas Cyclones constantly at the top. Like, teams all over Texas, whenever they go play national events, they show up.
Right.
Go ahead.
Yeah, one of the things that I notice when I'm at tournaments now is that I'm seeing so many more familiar faces just from everybody that's from Texas there, and they're all relevant. And actually, I'm tending to see them all deep into the Sunday round, which is, where they end up playing on our field, which is, not always the case. So yeah, it's a good sign for sure. And obviously Paintball Fit's done a fantastic job, and there's a lot of, it's a solid breeding grounds right now for sure. I mean, yeah, who knows where all those guys will be in the next few years.
Oh yeah. I think Fit as a field and as the scene as a whole in the North Dallas area, they kind of set the standard back in like 2016, 2017, 2018. And now what we're seeing is the rest of Texas is catching up, and it's really creating an arms race that's going to explode, I think, this year and next year, especially in like the mid to upper divisions.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me, but I definitely, to me, it would be hard for me to imagine a whole lot of other areas, certainly regions in the United States, like putting, or as a collective, having so much intent to get better, right? Because I mean, I know those guys up there, I mean, all over the state are really, really grinding and putting in the hours, and ultimately that's what it takes to be, to get over the cusp and getting into pro, but then after that, it's ratcheted up even more. But that's what it takes, no matter what, to make it pro and then to be kind of like an upper tier team.
Mm-hmm. Like even in Texas, like you've going back to like local series like the USXBL, which all of these teams that are going to national events are also competing in. Like Tribe, for example, like they won 3 NXL events, and I think they got knocked out in quarterfinals at the USXBL championships. So that tells you like how tough it is to win in Texas and how competitive it is. Like I think there's a pretty good example when the series titles nationally are getting knocked out somewhat early.
Right. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's always interesting too, because like I don't know how many teams go to the USXBLs, but like, lower divisions can be quite tricky to win actually, because there's so many teams, and also like the scouting it's not quite the same, and also there's also a level of unpredictability in the in the lower divisions, right? I mean, when you're in the pro division, because you can kind of guess the level that guys are at, you can kind of have a pretty good idea of how they're going to be playing and what they're going to do. But in the lower divisions, like I would imagine that is not so easy. It's got to be a little bit trickier to scout teams, because I think in the lower division, teams are just willing to do a little more off the cuff stuff or riskier plays, and when you're not like, let's just call it like a master, like sometimes you can just take one good punch and that's almost the end of the match.
Oh yeah. And you see it like all the time, like teams like the Dragoons, for example, they historically have struggled a little bit in D4, but this year they had a second place finish down at USXBL. So it might just be like a good layout, or who knows, maybe they like just did a lot of grinding for that particular event and it pays off.
Right.
Awesome. So you talked a little bit about how you got into paintball with playing with some people that went to your high school. Back in episode 12 of this podcast, we heard kind of his side of the story from Cesar Torres, and now we want to hear it from you. So tell us about how, like, the story of how you got in and what made you want to join the tournament side of things.
I mean, originally it was just the fact that some of my buddies were already doing it at a higher level, so it kind of gave me an immediate reason to want to be better, just really so I could continue to hang out with my friends and play paintball with my friends. And then I think about a year or two after that, we ended up linking up with Caesar, and Caesar played on our team for a couple of seasons, it was basically until we ended up all going to play national events. So we played with Caesar for 2 or 3 seasons. And I mean, at the time we were practicing almost every weekend with, obviously he was a big part of our team.
Cool. I mean, just talking to Caesar, who was, excuse me. It's incredible just learning how connected the whole Texas scene truly is. Like guys like him who have been
Right.
doing it for that long. Like talking to like James Cobb, for example, who was like big name, responsible for like early Houston scene in like the 80s and 90s coming to fruition, and had guys like Matt and John Jackson when they were rookies on his team.
Yeah.
It's really cool to learn all of these stories and how connected they are together. So with you like starting to come up and during those years where you said, you're playing every weekend, you're doing these drills, tell us more about like some of the details of how you were climbing through the ranks. So like how often were you playing, like what kinds of drills, how often are you playing tournaments in this time period?
Yeah, so during the like early aughts, I was probably playing somewhere around like 10 tournaments a year, and most of those were local. It wasn't until 2003 that I started playing national events, and once I started doing that, I was playing all the NXLs, and then we started playing both series, the 7-man and the NXLs, right? So once that happened, I pretty much wasn't really playing any local tournaments anymore. But honestly, as far as like drills and stuff were concerned, I've basically never consistently done drills in my entire life. Because to be honest, quite frank, and I've talked about this before, but to me, drills are very, they can be helpful, but only to a certain degree. And, to me, paintball in the skill level is a lot like riding a bike. It's like, sure, can I be slightly better with my snap? Yeah, sure. But at the same time, for me, playing is all encompassing, and it teaches you about everything that you're going to be using as a result of trying to get better, right? But if I was to define a drill that helped me succeed in paintball and like climb the ladder, it was really just studying, being a student, and like really watching games with the intent to learn something from them. I think a lot of people waste a lot of time doing all kinds of stuff, not just paintball, but like, I could make this correlation to, a guy trying to go and learn how to play golf. A lot of people don't understand like efficient use of time. And, that for me is really important part of it, and for me, I would study a lot. I would watch games very intentfully and really focused on trying to get something out of every point I watched, right? And even if that was like I'm watching guys that were no good play, I could still learn something from what they were doing, right? Even if it was like, don't do that, right? But you just keep putting those lessons in your brain, and over time you start to develop, like this IQ of things to do and things not to do in paintball, and certain circumstances and certain situations and certain risks to take and when not to take them, right? And ultimately all that came from was watching games, studying. And even when I played games, I would study myself and talk to myself after the game about what I could have done differently and what I could have done better and what I would have done if somebody tried to stop me doing certain things, right? So when you start doing stuff like that, you end up learning a lot more than just going out there and doing a drill like, I'm going to go and shoot the guy running to the corner. I mean, yeah, sure, that's going to be helpful, but in the grand scheme of things, like, the most important thing you're going to do out there is make good decisions. And to do that, you have to study to understand what a good decision is in a given moment. If you don't do that, it doesn't matter how good your snapshot is. You're not going to understand the higher level concepts of paintball. And if you don't do that, you're not going to climb the ladder, period.
It's interesting how that seems to be a common theme among some of the pro players that I've interviewed. Like, most recently, I had Nathan Roberts on the show, where he was saying the game nowadays is so much more of a mental game and a teamwork, like chess match, than it used to be. And it's not about like these individual mechanics anymore. It's about how you're using your teammates, like who's covering what zones, how to communicate to make like specific plays. And that's just the most important thing nowadays. So I also like how you mentioned like efficiency and time, because too often whenever you're going to the field, or at least when I'm going to the field on weekends, we've got guys that are showing up early, gearing up quickly, and throughout the course of the practice, they're, being efficient in the pits. They come off, get air, get paint, go back on. And then there's some other guys who don't get there till like 10, 10:30, 11. Sometimes they're not even geared up and ready to play until noon. And then they play like, 3-4 points. And by that time, the guys who've already showed up early, they're pretty much done. So it seems like, as far as the approach, like, you definitely have to be like focused in your approach.
Well, it's interesting that you kind of mentioned that about guys getting there early and like trying to get their reps in and stuff. But I would actually argue that that's not really, the best way to have success. Because, like, again, it's not really about how many points you played in a day. Like that's such a skewed like way to think about how you're going to improve, right? I would argue that most of the guys that go play at X Factor have been playing paintball for like a considerable amount of time, right? A few years, right? All right. And if I was to guess that most players at X Factor have been playing for several years and likely aren't really much better than they were a year ago or 2 years ago, right? That's probably pretty fair to say that. And there's a reason for that. It's because whatever they're doing or whatever they've been doing isn't really that strong of a strategy to improve at a individual level, right? So, like, what I was saying is, again, in this circumstance, I would actually argue that if, let's just say, 5 guys that are playing at X Factor, they went out there and at the beginning of the day, they set forth a new strategy to really get the most out of the day. And by doing that, what I would suggest them do is, hey, look, let's say we're going to get out here at whatever time we agree on, and we're going to play for X amount of hours, but in those hours, we're not trying to play a bunch of points. We're trying to break down a handful of points over the day at a very deep level, right? And let's say we play 5 points, and we break those points down, and we talk about every little aspect of those points and what could have happened in different circumstances of those points. If a team did that consistently for a year, I'm guarantee that if they even played 5 to 10 points per day max, or even per weekend max, they would find a noticeable improvement as a team and as individuals doing that method versus just getting out there as early as possible and getting reps in and getting off the field and getting back in there as fast as they could. Again, that is not an effective use of time. All that is just like kind of brute forcing stuff, but you're not actually getting anything out of those games. And what I was talking about earlier is like every single point I played through those, early 2000s up until probably 2013 or 2014, every point, that was the level of thought that I had with every point I played. And when I go out to the field and I watch teams going at it, there's almost no thought at all. They just go out there and play. They come back in, they talk very briefly, but not really at a deep level to understand anything, and they just go right back out there. And you just can't really learn anything like that, in my opinion. And I think that's why a lot of people are kind of like treading water when it comes to their growth as individuals and as teams, But if you actually put forth that kind of like effort to digest and really understand what won and lost a point, or what mistakes were made in the point and what you could learn from those, that's when you start to see tangible difference in skill, right? But for some reason, like that, getting to that concept is like, it's almost like a hidden treasure, it's not blatantly obvious. And for that reason, it's not, you see a lot of skill gap at your local fields.
Along those lines, what would you recommend as far as like how to break those things down? Do you think maybe implementing something like filming your points, do you think that would go a long way in helping teams in their growth?
I mean, yeah, you could do that. I personally think that's, even a step too complicated. I mean, you don't need to film the points because you experience those points, and likely you have more than 5 guys on the team, to talk about what they saw from the sidelines, But really all it is about, if you think about it, every time you've been shot in a point, that's an opportunity to do something different or learn from that situation, right? And so if you're not actively trying to make the most of that opportunity, then more than likely, if you're not trying to make the most of it, you're not making the most of it. And ultimately, that's where you just get stagnant, right? If you're not actively trying to find better ways of playing this game, right? And again, that's one way to do it, is every time you get shot, try to figure out why you got shot, what you could have done differently. It's as simple as that. You just try to fix your mistakes. And once you start fixing your mistakes, you start realizing other parts of the game, and you get a little further down that practice, right? But again, if you're just going out there and playing points and that's it, and you come back in and you fill your pods and you go back out there to play more points, it's like you're doing like, you're basically just showing up with no intent to get better, and then that's kind of the whole point I'm talking about, is like being efficient with what you're doing, and ultimately that means is every point you played should be an opportunity for you to learn something, whether you won the point or you lost the point. You should take away something from that point that either, builds confidence and reaffirms what you're doing, or gives you an opportunity to learn from something you're not doing.
Absolutely. There's definitely a lot to take away from that in how, at least me personally, I can change my approach. I'm sure a lot of people listening can change their approaches as well and change their mindset so that they're learning more from these opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the trick. And then, first, in my opinion, the first thing you figure out when you're like a beginner playing paintball is like how to hold your gun and not be giving away too much of your body, right? So once you can get to the point where you're not just like an obvious mismatch in any gunfight you're at, then you need to build up the mental game, right? The brain. And then once you start doing that, then you start getting way more into the technical side, because once you get past that initial hump of like the lower divisional play to the upper tier, where a lot of guys are at the similar like kind of brain space or paintball IQ, right? Then at that point, then again, you have to go back to the skill of snapping and gunfighting and movement and stuff like that. So then there's that level. So you're constantly building upon each level you're going up. But in my opinion, the easiest way to separate yourself at a lower mid division is to increase your knowledge and understanding of not making mistakes and taking advantage of situations you're given, right? And at the lower divisions, they're all over the place. There's oftentimes big zones that are open. There's easy ways to shut down a team. And again, by expanding your paintball knowledge, you're able to exploit those weaknesses in your teams and in the other teams you're playing. and it can kind of get you a long way.
For sure. Appreciate all that. So before we continue, everybody in the chat, welcome. If you have something that you would like to ask Archie, please go ahead and get it in the chat, and we will get to it towards the end of the show. So Archie, continuing on, like we've covered pretty much all of your backstory and your history and your career up till this point. So with all of those moments, which you've had a lot of big moments, especially in the last 2 years, what would you say has been your favorite moment in your career so far?
Man, it's really hard to say, because at this point I've got quite a bunch of really great memories. I would have to say, for me, honestly, probably my favorite one. It's really tough to choose because there's, for completely different reasons, like at the beginning of the season, and I'm very proud of my career up to this point, up to the point where I decided to come play for Dynasty. No matter what, at that point, I could have retired, and I was thinking about it heavily. And I was totally content with my body of work and my career, and I've won a lot of tournaments, and I think I've proven a lot about who I am as a paintball player and as a human being. And, I just didn't really need much more. But that first win in Orlando this year for me was very potent. It was very meaningful. It just filled me up quite literally a bunch. It was something that I didn't quite think I would enjoy as much as I did. And then also winning World Cup with Oliver and the plethora of all the kind of things wrapped around the whole season, winning 3 out of the 4 big ones, playing with Oliver for the first time in my career and hanging out with him. I mean, he stayed at my place for some time before the event, and just being around that just amazing energy there with this group of guys, and kind of the pressure of trying to keep the season a win, because I don't know if you were aware of this, but if Impact had won the tournament and we got third, we wouldn't have won the series, even though we won 2 of the 4 events. And so, it was just kind of one of those things, like rising to the occasion, playing with Oliver, all the kind of the big energy around like Hormesis and Oliver being back, and then capping off the season with like another dominant tournament win was just really special. So it really is tough to say, because both those were just so high on my list. And then obviously winning World Cup with X Factor, like the first one, my first pro World Cup win. And it was very meaningful. It was with like a lot of the OG guys, and it was just such a special thing for us at the time.
Definitely a lot to choose from there. I don't think there could have been a wrong answer, no matter which one.
Right. I mean, I have a few other big tournament wins too, but again, it's like, it's so hard to pick just one. But thankfully, I've had a bunch of really special moments.
Yeah, absolutely. I bet you can throw the 2019 series win with X Factor as well. Definitely.
That was definitely up there for sure. I mean, that was obviously a special season as well. And for us getting the monkey off the back, we'd placed high for so long and couldn't find a way to win a tournament, and then we win 2 back-to-back and win the series championship. It was just, that was obviously a big year for our team.
For sure. All right. So we've talked a lot about your past career leading up to now. I want to transition to talking more about this brand that has come up in the last few years, which is Project. So Project, in the last 2.5 years or so, kind of came out of nowhere to become one of the premier like private labels in paintball. So started with like the long sleeve that had the individual numbering on the inside, with hoodies and like barrel socks and other soft goods, but also obviously the big ticket item, the Project G CS2 Pro. And now you've also got the Project TM40. So where did this idea originally start out with?
I think originally it just came from, for many years, I don't know, I kind of forget how long ago it's been, but I had 2 custom milled, like unique one-of-one CS1s. And I kind of realized how kind of cool and how much of a demand there was for that type of a marker. In the limited release space, people really, back in the day, people used to have custom guns. It was very common. You go to a field and you'd be able to see, 20 or 30 custom milled markers at any given point. And for whatever reason, the manufacturers got away from that, and they just started kind of doing stock runs of a lot of high quality and high quantity guns. And I was kind of toying around with the idea with Eclipse, and this was actually like many years before project started. I had talked to Jacko and Leds at Eclipse, I think probably in 2016 or 2017, so at least 3 years before, and about doing custom run guns. And we had a good conversation. I understood the process. I understood what it would take. And then a couple years later, I said, you know what? I think I'm ready to actually do this. And obviously, like that whole development process, Ryan at the time was in my in an office space, right, that I was in as well. So I would see him almost every day. And we were bouncing our heads around and coming up with ideas. And finally we nailed the design, got it done, and then COVID happened. So then we had to wait, like a 7 or 8 month delay. And thankfully, when that all kind of happened, people supported it, people liked it, and they still do. It's kind of crazy. Those guns still command like almost $1,000 more than retail, just because they're so coveted. And so that's kind of how it got started. And then we started learning and doing other things and adding to the brand. And, it's been a pretty cool little thing. And it's definitely one of my favorite things about being at tournaments is seeing people wearing our stuff, using our stuff, and like coming and saying how much they appreciate the stuff we're putting out. So, that's like a huge bonus to being at these tournaments.
Yeah. I mean, heck, I'm sporting the hoodie.
Oh,
right
nice!
Now.
That's the hoodie. Nice. We're actually coming out with some more hoodies here pretty soon, actually.
Yeah. So we've got that. One of my teammates on the Titans, Lane Myers, he's super big into all the project stuff.
Right. Right. Yeah. Lane's my boy.
With all of these new releases coming out, be it soft goods, you had the collaboration with Hormesis to put out some headbands. Now you have not just the CS2, you have the TM40 as well. Like, was this always the plan to expand into all of these other products, or was it just like a huge surprise in the overwhelming response that you got with the first release?
So I wouldn't say I was like overwhelmingly surprised. Like I was pretty damn confident that it was going to be a success. To say that I was thinking years in advance, no, I wasn't. It just wasn't like that, But I kind of had the reason I did it, and the reason I was willing to take a chance on it was because I believed in the idea that much, and so, yeah, essentially we just kind of expanded the idea and started, doing more stuff and kind of creating more ideas and more products. And now we're working on a whole host of different things at any given moment. It's been fun. It's been enjoyable. It's also, honestly, again, like I said, it's a big bonus to be kind of like working in an industry where, we've put a lot of time and effort in on the field and in the pits, but not so much in a monetary sense or in a way to kind of pay ourselves back for all the effort, So it is nice to be a little more involved in it, and also taking kind of like an owner's stake in the game, So it's definitely one of the things I'm more proud of over the last few years.
Yeah, and I think it's cool to see that with Hormesis, you're seeing like a few more of these personal touches. Like I know that that Tiger Wear by who is it on Impact? Can't remember his name.
Kyle Spica and Mouse.
Kyle and Mouse. Yeah, they came out with their own line of headbands and other soft goods. Like you're seeing that more and more. It's cool to see that individualization kind of coming back. Like I know, at least for me personally, kind of looking at the whole paintball scene as a whole, a lot of players and teams, they wanted to go with this like all black, everything black, gun black, like there's like no personal touches, no style in there at all. And now that Hormesis is releasing all of these products, it's cool to see that personal flair starting to come back.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I definitely think right now is one of the more interesting times as far as products concerned in paintball that I can recall. There's a lot more art, a lot more individuality, a lot more kind of expression going on, and and as a result, the communities are getting bigger and bigger, and a little more at stake. I mean, there's a lot of media going on right now. I mean, there's a lot of people doing podcasts. Obviously, Play the Game has been phenomenal, and they're able to pump out a lot of high quality content often. And then, a lot of the other like kind of non-pro player media channels going on too. I mean, I can't remember a time where there's been so much. So it's really, it's good to see, and it's good to know that like at the end of the day, like paintball is supporting all this kind of connectivity in the game. It's really cool. It's a great time, special time in paintball, no doubt.
Oh yeah, special shout out to all of those media guys. Like I probably subscribed to at least 6 or 7 different YouTube channels in the past couple of months of all of these different like camera guys like Solus, Dufert Media. You've got like Verbal and Get That Shot are posting things more and more, and like the huge like increase in popularity and like the shorts format. Like those things are everywhere now.
Yeah, no, it's insane. I mean, yeah, those guys are. I think those guys are making big money with the reels. I mean, that's for whatever reason. That's just digestible content at the moment. Just being on people's phones and grabbing attention for whatever 5 seconds.
I mean, more power to them. Like if you're making big money because you're posting 5-second clips of someone getting run down or hoppers getting destroyed, like
absolutely, yeah, they're figuring it out. It's pretty. I mean, and again, it's cool to watch those things. It is a little you're doing the scroll wars, and that's what you're fighting. You're trying to fight the thumb from moving up. So a lot of that is like attention grabbing kind of raw footage. Is pretty cool
for sure. I do wish that it wasn't so much like reload clips that are getting all of these attention. Just people sounding off in the chat how we're like wasting all this
they can't
ammo.
Reload. Yeah, it's funny.
So with Project, do you have anything new on the horizon that you can give any sneak peeks about?
You know what? Honestly, I wish I'd brought some of the stuff out of my car. I would have just dropped one on here. But yeah, we're coming out with some hoodies next week, I think. We've got some JT accessories coming soon as well. And then we're working on a few other like hard goods stuff that is like one's completely under wraps. Nobody even knows anything about it at the present moment. Like a new product. And then also coming out with some new guns next year. I think we're hoping to do a CS3, an LV2, and a Force all in the 23 season. If that doesn't happen, we should definitely get 2 of them knocked out of the way, and then obviously we'll push anything that doesn't get done next year. We'll definitely have it done in the following season. But yeah, we're definitely looking to continue to make our stamp and make cool and interesting stuff. We also have a couple of other new business ventures that we're going to be involved in paintball with. Obviously, at the present moment, I can't really explain too much of it, but over the next 6 to 8 months, we'll be kind of releasing a little more info on that.
That'd be cool to hear. I'm excited to hear all of the new stuff coming out. Like, I just thought of a question actually to ask you. With all of those things coming out, and as you're getting more and more involved in releasing more and more things, would you ever consider as a brand project like sponsoring teams one day?
I mean, absolutely, sure. I mean, again, when you're talking about sponsoring, you got to be, it's got to make sense for both parties. So depending on what that is, yeah, absolutely, we'd consider it. I mean, honestly, we already have considered it. We were considering, doing some type of sponsorship with Aftermath this past season with the TM40 because they were already shooting TMs. And obviously we made our gun. We ended up sponsoring a few players on the team instead of the whole team, but it's definitely a thought of ours. I don't know if we'll ever get to the point where we will sponsor a whole team or not. It kind of just depends on the circumstances, but definitely look for us to be a little more familiar on the pro field in the next season or 2.
Very cool. We're definitely looking forward to it. Lane in the chat, he says he's got dibs on the first divisional sponsorship package.
All right, Lane, you got it.
All right. So we've talked about your past career. We've talked about projects. I want to get into the present and the future. So during this last off season, at the end of the 2021 season, you left San Antonio X Factor to join San Diego Dynasty. X Factor had a fantastic, couple of seasons. In 2019, they obviously won the series title. I'm going to combine 2020 and 2021 just because 20 being the COVID year only and having that cut short. So with those 2 years combined, Dynasty had 3 wins, 3 event wins, and all 3 of them beating X Factor in the finals. So after that had happened, obviously, last year you make the change over to Dynasty. So what would you say it was that like sparked that change?
For me, just quite simply, I wasn't enjoying myself on the team anymore. And when you put the level of effort that anybody that plays on X Factor or Dynasty or any top pro team, honestly, any pro team, the level of effort that's put into this is a lot. And if you're not enjoying yourself, then it just straight up doesn't make sense to continue to do it. So I just wasn't enjoying the game anymore. I wasn't enjoying the team. I wasn't enjoying showing up to practice. I wasn't enjoying the tournaments. And, that's just the easy way to put it. I just wasn't, it had lost the fun. It had lost the luster for me. And so then I was, again, at that point, I understood, and I kind of saw this coming a little bit. And then I had the other decision to make was, do I, really want to continue to pour this amount of effort into it for now? And ultimately, I came to the conclusion that I did want to, and I decided to go and play with the team that I thought I would have the most fun with. And that's ultimately the only reason I chose to go to Dynasty, and that was because I thought that group of people I would enjoy the most. And granted, I knew that was the case, and so that's why I went over there. And the results are another thing. I no matter what, even if we hadn't won 3 tournaments, even if we hadn't won any tournaments this year, I would have matter of fact still enjoyed myself a lot this season, and that's just because of the people I'm around at this moment in my life are a good match for who I am right now and who I want to be going forward. And so yeah, it was an awesome season, obviously, and then the results. I'm playing with a bunch of masters, but at the same time, it's that team and certainly the team we had this year makes a very, very difficult thing look easy at times. And there's so many things that go into winning a tournament that there are just no guarantees, again, like I said it earlier, I could have gone to that team and we could have won nothing and we could have had a terrible year, honestly, but thankfully the collective and the attitude and the culture and all the little things that the team does right gave us a lot of good opportunities to win some tournaments this year. And thankfully, when we got in those opportunities, we made the most of them. Anyways, nonetheless, at this point in time, I couldn't have been happier with the decision I made. And I'm looking forward to, at least a few years, continuing this kind of role this team is on right now. It's pretty surreal, to be honest. And to be a part of it is just, I'm like completely just thanking whoever it is that's allowing me to be here. I'm thanking them a lot.
Well, it was obvious that the level of chemistry was immediate whenever you joined, and I'm sure like you probably could have gone to any team in the league, like no questions asked. They would have made a spot, even if they had to. They already had a full roster. They had to kick someone off. They would have made room for you. But you go to Dynasty, and immediately you come out with a win in the first event. And Dynasty just kind of kept the ball rolling from the combined 2020-2021 season. They added another 3 major wins, including World Cup this year. So what is it that you say? Like you said that they do like the little things right. So what are those things that Dynasty does to keep themselves at the top and have, I guess, another question, surrounded by all these masters and being a master yourself, like, have you been able to find new ways to continue growing?
Yeah, I think so. As far as like being at the tippy top and like really defining where that edge is, part of that is just the diligence to really work hard and like be very mindful about every aspect of the game, whether that's um, our emotional well-being as individuals, our physical well-being as individuals, the collective identity of the team, and the kind of the hierarchy of needs. What's important, what isn't as important. Everyone as individuals and their own individual skill and what they're working on to bring to the team, and also the camaraderie level, like the level of respect and the level of kind of joy that we have together when we're not playing. All those things, met with obviously many years of experience as a team and as individuals, all collectively going after the same goal. It's been a really cool thing to be a part of, because my role on this team is so different than what it was on X Factor. And on this team, I can kind of be a fly on the wall and pick my moments when to talk, because I'm literally watching geniuses all around me talk about what we need to talk about. And so I'll try to fit in whenever I think it's appropriate, or whenever I think that maybe something could be touched on a little bit more, or maybe it didn't get touched on at all. Right. But I don't have to think a whole lot about the whole overarching theme of the team. That kind of it just comes together naturally because of the group we're with. And so that's kind of nice. And as a result of that, I can kind of spend a little more time focusing on my own personal playing style and my own things that I could work on at the present moment. I'm getting older, and it's funny because the last couple of seasons I haven't, probably because I haven't had the same level of fun, but I wasn't maybe giving it my all. And this year I really was trying to give it my everything. And that meant that I needed to rehash some things and come up with some new foundations within my game, and new ideas, and also kind of learn a new position, which quite exciting for me this season. It was really fun to play kind of as our main snake guy. That's not a position I've ever played really before. And that was fun to have some level of success there, and I think I did it pretty masterfully when I think about the whole season as a whole. So yeah, I mean, like it's a lot of little things that add up to essentially giving yourself a slightly better chance, and then it's about really being able to capitalize on those moments.
There's definitely a lot that goes into that, but yeah, all of the little things definitely add up. And at the end of the day, I think I can't remember who it is that this quote was. It might have been Mike Hinman, but like, add up everything together, but ultimately, like, all you have to do is go +1. And
True.
if you just go +1 in enough times, then suddenly, you're series champions once again. So it's just finding all of those little details and truly like doing everything at a high level, or doing the simple things at a high level, and not just like what's on the field, or your snapshot, or your individual fundamentals, like doing all of those things together. Just witnessing Dynasty be able to put out such a quality product on the field was exciting. I mean, Dynasty, like, y'all pretty much mercied your finals match at World Cup, like, and so many other finals appearances
and the semis too. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. The last two tournaments we won, we mercied them in the final. It's nuts. I've never played. And I said that in Philly when we did it then, but I've never won a tournament so easily. And then at World Cup, we did it there, and it's just like, man, it's pretty potent. It's definitely says a lot about the team and the group we have right now. Yeah, we'll see if we can keep giving ourselves a lot of chances, which I think that is going to be the case for the next few years. We'll just see how many we can rack up, and kind of, it's an exciting time to be a part of this team for sure. And I'm happy to. I'm happy to have come here, and I'm happy to be, essentially to feel like I'm adding at least a little bit to this great story that we've got.
For sure. And especially great time for any Dynasty fans out there who not only have gotten to witness this this absolutely dominant run, they got to see Oliver Lane come back out of retirement after 6 years to win
crazy,
the
man.
win the MVP in the finals at World's Cup after mercying multiple teams and just being absolutely dominant. So let's talk about Oliver. How long had you guys known about him coming back beforehand?
All we knew was that he was coming to World Cup, but we didn't know if he was even intending to play or not. So again, we didn't know that he was. We had heard he was going to come to practice, our first practice for the event, like a few days before. And again, to what extent that was going to be, we didn't really know. Would he play a few points? Maybe, but it wasn't like, yeah, he's going to be playing all day. We let him play as much as he wanted to, and he kind of started getting his feet under him, and he wanted to play a little bit more, and then he ended up playing about as much as everybody. And granted, on Dynasty, like, not everybody's like fighting to play more points, which is kind of nice actually. And like what I was telling you earlier is like, it's not a race to how many points you play; it's a race to learning the field and learning the game. And if you're critical about the points you do get, you're gonna make more out of them than just playing 50 points. That just for the sake of playing more points. So nonetheless, he kind of started slowly getting the groove back, and then he came to X Factor to play in that practice with us in X Factor and LVL, and he started getting better and better. Every day he played, he got better, no doubt, and that even continued through the tournament. And again, we didn't really know what was going to happen, and then it did, and it was just kind of a beautiful thing to be a part of and witness, and definitely special, kind of really powerful emotions going on in that environment, the whole weekend at the event. It was just such a really beautiful thing to be a part of.
For sure. I was able to witness at least a little bit of it firsthand, just getting to watch y'all's scrimmage at X Factor the week before, getting to actually interview Oliver during y'all's scrimmage. And then, of course, watching the tournament as it was going on. So for Oliver, is this a one-time deal, or are we going to see him more in 2023?
I think you'd have to ask him that. I don't necessarily know that he has an answer yet, but I suspect maybe he'll come back for World Cups for the Hormesis booth, or, I'm not really sure what his level of involvement is, but I do know he's coming to Texas in late May, and if he decides to stick around for a tournament or something, maybe he will. I don't know, but I do know he's coming to Texas in May.
Cool. Everybody stay tuned on that for sure. So with obviously the news for Oliver and anything else, so what else does Dynasty have on the horizon? Either roster moves during the off season, new gear or apparel coming out, any new products from Field One, anything at all? Does Dynasty have anything new on the horizon?
Not really, other than like continuing like a certain level of excellence at whatever they decide to do. This team has definitely transcended a lot of things and made its mark on this game for infinitely, basically. I know my signature series forces are coming out here pretty soon, I think within the next 2 weeks. And other than that, all the project stuff we've got coming out next year, I'm personally excited about it, and I'm excited to continue kind of trying to push the level of kind of mastery of this sport with this team. Yeah, it's been a ride for sure, and I'm looking forward to the rest of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're gonna get into some questions here in the chat. Let's see. So the first one that I see is again. Here we go. So did you have any matches or maybe specific points at Cup that stood out?
The unfortunate thing about Cup, the only thing that was unfortunate about it for me personally, is that the snake side of the field was just very boring. There wasn't a whole lot of moves to be made. There wasn't a lot of points to be won on the snake side of the field. It was more like if you fuck up, you lose, and otherwise you basically shouldn't take any risk. So because of that, it was kind of a boring position, unfortunately, and I wish there would have been a little more of a showcase of skill, because it really wasn't. I was basically playing with like maybe a 30 or 40% skill capacity on that side because there was basically almost no movement involved because there just wasn't worth it. So kind of managing expectations on that was a little interesting just because I'm just so not used to being put in a position where you really couldn't do that much, so but nonetheless I'm happy with the way I played, and understanding that there's more to your position on the field, and kind of taking that role and owning it and doing it the best of your abilities is essentially what I was trying to do, and I'm happy with what happened. But as far as like memorable matches or even moments, it's hard to say because it was just such a boring side. It was very similar every match. I would say the only memorable moments were like some of the mistakes I made just because they cost our team so much. And that's what I was saying about that side. It was just like there really wasn't a whole lot of risk because if you took a risk and it didn't pay off for you, you basically cost your team.
Yeah, that snake side was pretty one-dimensional. But I think I played up the center quite a bit up at World Cup, so I have a very different perspective. It was a lot more interesting.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And that was a meat grinder up there. But certainly at the pro division on the snake side, not a lot of teams were running out wide, and even after the breakout, it was really hard to get out wide because there's just so many guys in the middle that you couldn't really check off or see, and you're just walking, you're running through a big open zone. So it just made that side really critical.
Yeah, for sure. So next question is, how do you physically prepare for paintball tournaments?
For me, I try to get my heart rate up. I think that's what simulates playing paintball at a high level. It's essentially cardio fitness. Typically, like for me personally, when I'm in the gym, I'm trying to get my heart rate at 185 at least many times within an hour session. And usually it's like, all right, I'm working out hard to get that heart rate, and then I'll come down for a couple minutes, and then I'm trying to get it up there again, right? So I think that simulates a pretty good match, if you will, because you know how it is. It's like you play and it's really intense for a little bit, and then you come off for a little while and you cool off a little bit, and then you get back out there and it's really intense again. So I think that kind of puts me in the framework of basically being in familiar territory when I'm playing, and ultimately that's what it's all about, is being familiar and comfortable with what is going on out there, right?
For sure. Last question that I see in the chat. Also, I see someone that typed watching from or tuning in from Iran. It's 5 a.m. here, so shout out to you. Welcome to the show. We got one more question in the chat. So this question is, what layout did you have the most fun on this past season?
I would say it was either Orlando or Philly. Actually, no. I actually had the most fun on Chicago because it was like World Cup in the sense that it was really difficult, but it wasn't so difficult that you couldn't make it out. It was just very hard. So I thought that side, I was able to really show a pretty good understanding of how to play a very tough side on the field. I think that weekend in particular, I think on the snake side, I think I had set the bar of what the elite level was on that side of the field. Unfortunately, we didn't win the tournament, and I would actually unfortunately say in large part due to I got a penalty in our Sunday match, and we ended up losing that match by 1 or 2 points. If I didn't get one of those, I think I got 2 penalties in that match. If I didn't get one of them, then we could have had a pretty damn good chance to win that match. But at the end of the day, I still put on quite the performance over the weekend at that event.
Yep, that layout was definitely it seemed like a pretty balanced layout on all 3 sides. Like you could make it out on both sides eventually. It wasn't just like, right. Oh well, good luck getting out.
Yeah, I mean, I still think the snake side was much harder to get out than the Dorito side. But it wasn't impossible, it was definitely could be worth the risk if you could pull it off, For sure. So, but yeah, I did like that layout. It was a fun layout.
All right. So Archie, we're getting towards the end of our show. This question is one that I ask everybody who comes on. It helps get the word out on some up and comers or maybe some individuals that are unknown out there in the Texas scene. It also helps me know, like, who do I need to get on the show next? So are there any Texas-based either teams, players, brands, projects, like anybody in Texas in the paintball scene that has caught your attention lately. So if the rest of Texas does not know about them, who do they need to know about?
Man, unfortunately, like I kind of explained this earlier, but at the stage that I am in right now, I'm just not really in the local scene that much. Like what I see locally is essentially the media, and I know the fit guys are out there practicing a bunch, but I just don't. I'm not there to see it myself, so I'm not really. I'm not really aware of who's out there to watch, to be honest with you, because for me, I put a lot into this game, and to be at the high level of pro paintball, I mean, it takes a lot already. So to put in more for not a whole lot of real benefit for me personally, it's like, it's just not something that's high up on my list of things. I'm a busy guy, and I got a lot of other things that I've got going on and I'm trying to do. So yeah, like I said, I don't unfortunately know that much about the local scene as far as individual players and whatnot. What I do know is that at any given weekend, all over the state, there's a lot of people grinding and trying to get better. I just don't know who they are specifically, unfortunately.
Yeah, for sure. And we can give some shout outs to the media guys too. Like Verbal's been absolutely on the grind.
Right. Absolutely. Well, yeah, I mean, Verbal's working harder than probably most paintball players are, period. I mean, a lot of those media guys are too. But yeah, it is cool to see Verbal basically almost every time I'm playing paintball, I see him, which is cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'd say Verbal's definitely like leading the way and carving out the path for all of these other media guys to kind of follow through and like figure out like format wise,
right,
monetizing wise, even like how to get all of these,
yeah,
kind
he's
of
the gold
carving out the
standard.
way.
Right? I mean,
yeah,
he's definitely the gold standard for the media. I mean, there's no doubt about it. He blew up, and I mean, again, a few years ago, you didn't know who he was, and now he's synonymous with paintball media.
For sure. Brian, shout out to you. Keep up the good work, man. So Archie, thank you so much for your time. Do you have any last shout outs or things you'd like to say before we sign off?
Yeah, actually, I would like to, say, thank you to my business partner, Ryan Brand. He's the other half of Project. And, to be quite frank, Ryan's one of my best friends. He's my best man in my wedding. And, he's been just a great friend and a great ally in the sport. Obviously, we ran X Factor for many years, and really proud of the work we did there. And sometimes it was very difficult on both of us, and I just, even a public, he may or may not see this, but I just want to say a big thank you to him, because he's taught me a lot. He showed me a lot, and I'm just grateful to have him as a really good friend and as a really great business partner. I mean, I really couldn't be in business with somebody better. And I know how lucky I am to be able to say that statement. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Ryan, shout out to you. Definitely one very deserving of it. So everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to go follow Archie. That's at @kid_arch on Instagram. What other guests would y'all like to see on the show? Be sure to leave a comment down below. While you're at it, hit the subscribe button. The show goes live weekly here on twitch.tv/inthepitspaintballpodcast, and recordings are posted to YouTube, Amazon, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify the next day. I want to give a quick shout out to my partners and sponsors. That's FU Athletics, Get That Shot, Paintball Kumite, and Compete. We will see you guys next week for episode 26. We will have Coach Ryan Gray, coach of the newest team in the NXL Pro Division, Austin Notorious. So, guys, we will see you next week. Archie, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, of course, man. Have a good one. Thank you, guys.